Hello, I'm David Ellenstein, Artistic Director at North Coast Repertory Theatre. Thank you for joining us today for Theater Conversations. If you enjoy watching these, please click like, subscribe, and share. It's free to do, and it helps us get more visibility for these videos. Thank you. Hello, and thanks for joining us today for Theater Conversations. It's my pleasure to be joined today by the illustrious actor, director, artistic director, theater teacher, Marco Barricelli. Hi, Marco.
Hello, hello. Thank you for having me, inviting me. How nice.
I'm so glad you're here. And I just want, you know, when I first asked Marco to do this, he said to me, "Your audience doesn't know who I am. Why do you want to talk to me?" And I said, "My audience should know who you are." And I know who you are, and I've admired you and everything you've done, you know, throughout your career. I've known about, and we only met not that long ago, but I've certainly known about you for a long time. And now that you are part of the San Diego community, which we'll talk about in a few minutes, I have a secret desire that as we get closer, you'll end up doing something here at North Coast Rep at some point. So that's my secret desire. So just not to make it a secret, Marco is now teaching Shakespeare and acting as well, or just Shakespeare?
Yeah, no, I teach Shakespeare, and then in undergrad I teach, I've taught Pinter, I've taught Hamlet, I teach general acting stuff.
This is at UCSD?
UCSD, that's correct.
In La Jolla, and you're living here now, right?
I live here now, yes I do, in Scripps Ranch.
Oh, fantastic. So just to fill in the audience a little bit, Marco has had an amazing career. He was more than a decade at Ashland, Oregon, playing leading roles. You were how long at A.C.T. in San Francisco? A long time.
6 or 8 seasons, I can't remember, but a long time.
6 or 8 seasons there. Played major roles at most of the regional theaters of any note across this country, including the Mark Taper Forum and the Guthrie and Actors Theatre of Louisville and the Old Globe, and everywhere across this country, as well as working on Broadway, as well as doing some film work, and then also being the artistic director of Shakespeare Santa Cruz for, I want to say 6 or 7 years. Is that right?
6 years, yeah.
6 years, yeah. So an illustrious career, and varied too, which is always makes it more interesting, I think.
Yeah. It does.
How'd you get into this crazy business?
How I got into it? Well, sort of not very interesting, but I was in high school. I was always an artist. So I was in extended day, what they called extended day art classes. I was drawing and painting and sculpting, a lot of sculpting. And I thought I would end up being a sculptor in my life. And then this was in the 70s, right, in Southern California, because I basically did junior high and high school in Riverside, not too far from here. And, you know, we were all smoking pot and doing that. And I was sitting, there used to be this area right off the high school campus where we could go smoke, right? And this girl came up to me and said, "Hey, you know, the theater department is doing Taming of the Shrew. You ought to audition." And I said, "Oh, no, I don't want to do that. Theater, you know, wearing tights, and no, who wants that?" But then I thought about it, and I thought, you know, look, you'll be getting through high school. This was in my junior year, and I thought, you know, you might as well try to do something other than the sculpting and artwork and so forth. So I showed up, and Richard Rossi was his name, the high school theater teacher, and he cast me as Petruchio, and so it was a baptism by fire. I was suddenly playing this huge role in a Shakespeare play, and never having ever dreamed of being an actor. And that sort of changed my life. I mean, it was a whole different, it was like, oh, this is, you know, there are like-minded people here, and I like the idea of everybody working on a project that has one goal. the collaborative aspect of it was really a happy thing for me, even though I tended to be a loner, but I really liked working cooperatively with other people. And so I did that. And then, so my first year of college, I decided to go to Cal State Fullerton, which is not far from here either. And then there was a teacher director named Rick Risso at UC Riverside. And
wait a minute, you went from Rossi to Risso?
I went from Rossi to Risso. My two early mentors were a couple of Italian guys with very similar names.
But before you keep going, so you really, what you're saying, it was because of a girl. That's what you're saying.
It started because, yeah, I wanted to kind of cozy up to this girl.
There we go. Okay, so now you're at Fullerton.
So now I'm at Fullerton. I was there for a year. They didn't allow at that time freshmen to be in main stage shows. That was just a rule they had, which sort of I was unhappy about, obviously. So Rick Risso offered me a full ride at UC Riverside. So I went there, and while I was there, my best friend and I decided, hell, let's audition for Juilliard. What the hell? So we did. We both got in, and then I moved to New York City and spent 4 years studying at the Juilliard School. At a time, as I look back on it now, Juilliard it's a great school. But when I look back individually at those instructors that I had the good fortune of working with there, for all its difficulty, because it was terrible in a lot of ways, right? There was a lot of demands, a lot of humiliation, a lot of cutting you down. But at the end of the day, I'm really grateful for my time there. I felt it gave me a lot that I'm still, I use every day of my life, right? So
right.
I was very fortunate about that. And it was a 4-year program, so that's a real deep, part of, that kind of concentration for 4 years. I'm very happy about it now. And of course I was in Manhattan then and just started my career out there,
And did you stay in New York for a while before you then went because you then went and got another degree at A.C.T, is that correct?
No.
Or did you just go and work in the company?
No, from there, I kept jobbing out of New York. I did a few things in New York, but then kept jobbing out. And finally, I got hired at the Oregon Shakespeare Festival, and I'd done, I think, 3 seasons by then, 4 seasons or something. And they asked me to come back for another season. And so I wrote to the board of my apartment there on 50th and 9th in Manhattan and said, I'm going to continue my sublet because I have another season. Their seasons are extended in national, and they were 10 months at that time. And the board wrote back and said, no, you have to come back here and live here for a year before we'll let you sublet again. And so then I had a decision to make. Am I going to turn down work just to hang on to an apartment in New York City, or do I let it go? So I said, fine, I'm taking the work. And, did several more seasons out at OSF. And by then, and they weren't all consecutive, right? I would go and I'd take a season off and go work elsewhere and come back. And then Carrie Perloff at A.C.T. was looking for a Mangiacavallo for her production of The Rose Tattoo by Tennessee Williams. And I was doing a show, I was doing Taming the Shrew again at South Coast Rep, and directed by the wonderful Mark Rucker, may he rest in peace. And Carrie came and saw it and asked me to come to A.C.T. to do Mangiacavallo. And then while I was there at A.C.T., she sort of sat me down and said, what is it that you're looking for in your career? And I said, well, to be perfectly honest, I'm looking for a theater company to make a commitment to me, for which, in return, I will make a commitment to the theater company. And so Carrie said, all right, I'll do it. Let's start with you. You'll be a one-person company, because I was, while I was there, I was acting, I was teaching, and I was directing in the conservatory. And we'll see how it works. So we did it for a season. It seemed to work quite well. And then she brought on 3 other company members. And that started a very fruitful collaboration there at A.C.T. I'm very grateful for it, because she gave me wonderful opportunities to work with wonderful people in plays that I loved, deep plays that actually said something,
Right.
about the human condition.
How many times did you end up playing Petruchio?
I think I've played Petruchio at this point probably 4 times or 5. Wow. It's just one of those. I mean, I've repeated a few of the Shakespeare plays, but it's that one, I don't know. And it's so now, it's so hard to do that play now, right? I mean, right. But yeah, I went around a lot on Timmy the Shrew.
So I know you played Cyrano, and I know you've played Hamlet, and I know you've played a lot of the great roles. Which ones stand out and go, that was the pinnacle, that was like one of the great experiences I've had in the theater playing that part?
I will say this. From those early days as a junior in high school, I went to see at the Amundsen Richard Chamberlain playing Cyrano de Bergerac.
I saw it too.
Okay, so you were there. Maybe we were at the same show.
We could have been.
But I was...
And sorry, Marco, and Jonathan McMurtry was in that production.
You're kidding me.
No, he played a small part, but he was in it.
Oh my God, I wish I had known when I worked with John.
Yeah.
Oh my God. Because John and I got very close on the show at at the Old Globe. Wow.
Yeah.
Wow. Thank you for telling me that. Yeah. But I was, when I say smitten by this play, that cannot begin to describe what I felt. I felt, I have a big nose, I always felt sort of unattractive or whatever, and ill-equipped in so many ways. And here was this guy, right, who had these same kind of hang-ups about himself, but filled with poetry and passion and beauty. And I just got hooked. And so that play for me became forever a sort of touchstone, a sort of thing I would circle back to. It's the only thing I wanted to do. I was promising myself that at some point I would find somebody who was willing to cast me in the role and at least get one shot at it before. And because I had played Christian early on, with when Henry Warnitz played Cyrano up at OSF. And I became also totally infatuated with the Burgess translation, which is, to my mind, the definitive translation of that play, still is, in my opinion. And so, cut to many, many years later, and I was standing in line about to go in to see a show at Berkeley Rep, and happened to be there was Libby Apple, the then artistic director of OSF. And I had worked there under her. So, oh, hi, how are you? Yeah, blah, blah, blah. And then she sort of mentioned these magical words came out of her mouth. And she said to me, you know, I'm going to retire in a year or 2 years, I forget what it was. But she said, why don't you tell me which show you are in, what you're interested in doing, so we can get that in before I retire. And I didn't pause. I said, Cyrano, no question, you know? And she said, well, let me think about it. And sure enough, she came back a couple of weeks later and said, we're gonna do it. And I mean, it was a dream come true. And Laird Williamson directed.
Yeah.
Laird?
Laird was in my dad's theater company in Los Angeles in the 1960s. So yeah, I knew Laird.
Oh my God. So Laird, again, rest in peace, but Laird, I had done several shows with him. And so we had a working relationship already. So Cyrano for me, but that you know, it's not everyone's cup of tea, but it was for me. It was really something that I wanted to do. I mean, you can't say no to Hamlet. It changes you as an actor. The same thing with Richard III, you know. Right. So, I mean, they all have their challenges, but my heart of hearts was really in Cyrano.
It's such a commitment for a theater to do it because the cast is enormous, and the costuming and all that stuff. So it's a gigantic and expensive show to put on, but boy, when it's done well, it's worth it. It's so worth it.
It is. Yeah, I really love it. And that Burgess translation just sings. It's just gorgeous.
So how did it happen that you transitioned to become an artistic director at Shakespeare Santa Cruz? How'd that happen? And what was that like for you to no longer be an actor and or director and or teacher, but suddenly running a company and having to deal with all the issues that comes with actually running the company?
Well, that happened because I had been asked to throw my name in the hat for a few theaters around, and I did, but they went with someone else. And then I knew Shakespeare Santa Cruz was coming up because I knew Paul Whitworth, wonderful, wonderful actor. And Paul was, I knew he was going to be stepping down and that there was going to be a search happening. And I forget whether Paul encouraged me to put my name in the hat or not, but at any rate, I was in the running. And it seemed to me a nice fit because it was a summer company. It was not sprawlingly huge, not like an OSF or an A.C.T, right? It was manageable for somebody with my, you know, paucity of experience being an artistic director. And I liked the work they did that I saw. So, you know, whatever, I went through the process and they offered me the job and I loved it. You know, there were things about it that that drove me a little bit crazy, but I felt like the things I loved about it, I really loved a lot about it. I loved putting people together on the right project at the right time. I loved the audiences there. I thought they were really smart. This theater was situated at that time on the university campus at UC Santa Cruz. So a lot of the stuff that we had to answer to was frustrating because a university and a professional theater have two different missions and they overlap in a few places, but not always. You know, the money part of it was a struggle because at that time they wouldn't allow us to, it's a small community, Santa Cruz, right? So there's a finite number of people who are in a position to, and we weren't allowed to tap the people the university had tapped. So those kind of struggles were always there.
Yeah.
But they were always going to be there. That's set up. That's just the way it is. And so, but I loved it. I had a great staff, and I found that I was good. Where now I'm having to, you know, a lot of the administrative stuff at the university is just, my head has a hard time in that world. As artistic director, a lot of that stuff, you know, the deftness of delegating those kind of responsibilities was what the job was about as artistic director.
Right.
So it wasn't about me creating a schedule, it was finding the right person to create that calendar.
Right.
You know, I would put together all the artistic decisions and bring the people together, and then hopefully I felt that I was able to set everything up so that these artists had the best chance possible to do their best work.
Well, boy, you're echoing what I always say. You
Yeah.
know, as a director, you know, really, you don't execute anything. All you do is get everybody else to execute it as well as they possibly can. And then by extension, as artistic director, it's the same idea, but for the whole company.
That's right.
Because, yeah. So that sounds like I would have liked to be around while you were running it.
Well, I mean, I really understood early on that to be an artistic director is, rather than it being sort of the you know, the jewel in the crown of a theater company, it's actually, I think, should be the opposite. Your ego and your putting forward of yourself, what has to turn you on is setting up other people to succeed.
Right.
Not yourself, right?
Yep.
And the best artistic directors, I think, know that, like you. I think that that's an important quality to have, and to have it purely, you know.
So Marco, you've done this most of your life. You've been in the theater most of your life in so many different ways. And so right now we're shut down, you know, we can't do anything live. It's just the way it is for however long it's going to be. What do you see happening? How do you see theater coming back? Do you have any thoughts about what will endure, what may not endure, or what are you thinking for going forward?
Well, that's a question. That's a good question. It's a question that really has no answer right now. I hope that whatever we come back to is different from what we left. There's a lot of stuff happening socially, politically, I think, that is, you know, about damn time. And I think the theater has to adapt. I think it has to change. It has to become something else. What I hope is that there are more voices heard, more voices featured, more, you know, BIPOC people running these companies, making the decisions, collaborating with different artists. And I hope that we don't lose sight of, and I don't think we will. I mean, I've been reading all these essays on HowlRound and different things about how, you know, Shakespeare is problematic, and I understand their arguments, but I think Shakespeare will survive. I think the Chekhovs and these kind of plays will survive, but it may take time for them to roll around. So that's on a sort of philosophical level. I mean, the stories about the human condition will continue. On a practical level, Look, I'm supposed to do a show at La Jolla Rep, but I don't know how or if it's going to happen. Right now, they've moved it to the springtime. On a practical level, I think it's going to take time for us to get back together as a group, that kind of group mentality. And even when it's okay, even when, for example, there's a vaccine and people or whatever, it's still a psychological barrier to get through. Oh, I'm about to go into a room with 750 other people and we're all sitting close together and breathing together. That barrier is going to be difficult to overcome. So somebody said that theater is going to be the last thing to come back into online. I mean not online, I mean into its former self. And I would probably say that's probably true.
Right. Well, we know the Greeks did pretty good with their stuff, with the thousands of people that gathered together, and we know it probably went back way before that to people, as Mel Brooks said, the guy in the cave, Murray the Nut, or whoever it was, the first comedian. So I'm personally confident that we will get back to this most intimate art form of doing it live together. It's just, as you say, when.
Yeah.
Marco, yeah, go ahead.
No, I was going to say that the act of theater is fundamental to human existence. Yeah. So it definitely will come back. The question is when and what form it's going to take.
Right. Well, I'm so happy that you are the first in the new evolution of these theater conversations in my introducing people that my audience is not familiar with yet, but who should be. And I'm going to now start to introduce some people who I think that they will really enjoy knowing. And I'm really glad you're the first, because I'm looking forward to you and I getting to know each other better and working together down the road.
Awesome.
So
yeah,
I really appreciate you doing this today. And I look forward to seeing you in person really soon.
100% my pleasure. Thank you. Thank you so much. I loved it. Ciao. Take care.